meeting at 6:30
All
if there's an audience out there.
Clicking now.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Cloud. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Averill Park Central School District Board of Education meeting on January 25th, 2021. I want to say we are going right into item number 2, which is our policy review of the 4000 series. If you're at home and you want to stay tuned in, you are more than welcome to hear us review these policies. If you are tuned in right now to see the regular board meeting, feel free to come back at 6:30 when we will be starting our regular board meeting at that time. We will be taking a 15-minute break from 6:15 to 6:30 prior to between the policy review and the regular board meeting. So with that, we will start our policy review. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have been going sort of page by page and asking if there's any questions, comments. This batch seems to be a little bit different than the other previous batches we have, in that some of the NYSSBA policies they have that Averill Park didn't have, and they're recommending a few, but they're saying we don't need a few, so it's a little bit more confusing. So we'll try to maybe go through the policies, but also make sure we note anything on the table of contents that we might need to review or not review, I guess, or take out of our list per NYSSBA's recommendation. Okay. So with that, we might as well start with policy 4000. And I will start because on this one, there's 2 options that NYSSBA provides for us. The option number 1, and then option number 2. And I believe that my preference is that we should use the option that is directly below the bolded options that are provided. But I mean, that's a good start to the discussion on this.
So option number 2 then, Jess, just because it seems like it's talking about an introductory paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think if there's an introductory paragraph that kind of keeps it generic enough that we don't, because otherwise it sounds like we have to create a paragraph that mirrors that. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's one of those things where if they've worked on something that's more standard verbiage, unless there's anyone that feels there's really something that needs to be covered.
I had a note on here that I also thought we should go with option 2, but did we want to, it says, if the board develops a district vision statement along with members of the community, it should, we have the option 2. Would the district vision statement be instead of that paragraph where it says the Board of Education is committed to working with blah, blah, blah? Or is that paragraph in and of itself enough?
I think my interpretation is that the paragraph is sufficient without the board. And vision. We do have our mission and vision, elsewhere.
Right.
So.
Well, in that case, I just think there should be a hyphen between 20 and first, if everyone agrees.
Where is that?
Culturally,
oh, yep,
near the end of the paragraph.
Yep. Oh, I need to get my colored pen out. Sorry. I agree. And I compared this because this was a suggested policy to replace our district's current policy. And this reflects the commissioner's regulations. So I'm all for that. The only thing our policy seemed to have that this one is missing is information on student and staff citizenship, like develop good working habits, self-discipline, sportsmanship, and things like that. But I think that's kind of baked into our mission. So I'm not, I like that this this one follows the commissioner's regulations.
When we talk about the note below that's shaded, where it says the following is not a word for word recitation, but instead attempt to capture the blah, blah, blah. It says the board may choose to omit the standards and simply indicate that the district will adhere to the state's learning standards. My notes on this say, I think we should omit the standards and indicate that we will adhere to the state's learning standards because it's more open and provides less need for changes later.
Oh, that's a good point.
So then you could just refer to the state's learning standards always, and then we'll always have it in our policy, and we won't need to be continually updating our policy to reflect what the state's learning standards are, because that's what we're following.
Oh, that's a good point. Peter gave it a thumbs up.
I agree with Ann on that as well. I think that's a good way to go.
Okay.
Prevent us from having to do that later.
Okay. Does everyone seem to agree with that?
Yes.
Doug, Chris, Samantha, I think you nodded yes. Okay. All right. So let's go with that, omitting the standards and just indicate that we'll adhere to the learning standards. And then we'll leave in that second number of items that said to facilitate achievement of the board's articulated learning standards for all students. The district's administration and staff will be guided by the following.
Where are you talking about?
That's on page 3.
Oh yeah, I said okay to stay in next to that.
Yeah.
Okay, 11 minutes for one page. Woohoo!
Well, one policy. We got 3 pages done. But Kim, something I would ask if everyone is in agreement is that globally we change anything that's he, she to they, anything that's his, her, or him, her to their, especially if we have students that are identifying, or even staff or faculty that are identifying as a binary. I think the standard now is to use their and not he, she, or his, her, or. So that's a global comment because he, she, his, her is all over the place in these policies. So can we make that global change without me pointing it out every time? Are people okay with that?
I agree with that, Jesse. Absolutely, 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
Talked about that before on some other policies anyway.
Yeah, we've been trying to
Yeah.
clean that up.
I think we've started to do that.
Okay. All right. Kim, is that okay to make a global note on that?
Yeah, I made a note. So as I do the revisions, I'll make sure to do the replacements of the pronouns.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Does everybody have any other questions, comments on 4,000? Okay, moving on to 4,010. Assuming we're receive Title I funding?
Yes, we do every year.
Okay, that's what I thought. But just wanted to confirm because they have a note there.
Me too. So that means we'll keep this one instead of ours. that we'll
Yes.
take the replacement.
Yes. I'm okay with the replacement. I have no comments on the replacement, and I agree we should take that. Anyone else? Okay. Should we move on to page 5, number 4020?
Good.
I just had a question on this one because it says that the superintendent of schools may solicit. Is that something that is universally done, but we don't want to say will?
Jim, that's for you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The calendar committee is actually only in the language of the APTA contract. So they actually have a committee that is in their language that we have to have representation from. So we in the past have put out to administrators. We put it out to CSEA this year. MC is on it. So yes, I think you don't have to do it. I think ours is probably one of the more inclusive ones from what I've gathered from Questar meetings, because the calendar comes from then and then comes out to the different component districts. So I would say yes, more of a may.
Okay.
Any other comments on this one? It's a pretty short one. Okay, then we'll move on to, well, let's talk about 4100. They did not provide a sample on that, the organization of instruction. I'm not sure what they mean by that policy, if it's something that we think we would require or not, or if you guys just want to move on. And we don't have a current policy, I believe, on that, which is why we didn't have a review on it, but I just want to double check with anybody, if anybody has any thoughts on that before we. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll take that as we're not inclined to entertain a 4100 at this time. Okay, so we'll move on to page 6, 4200, curriculum management. And this again is offered to replace the board's current policy, and it's because it's more encompassing.
I have a comment on this one. We already talked about the global change. I'm looking about 2/3 down with the second paragraph under curriculum development. Of course, we have that global change that you mentioned, Jesse, about the he/she thing. But my comment is in the last sentence of that paragraph, where it says that provides for the effective participation of administrators, teacher curriculum leaders, students, parents. My issue is other community members and members of the board. Under other community members, I just said, like, who would possibly be, like, are we opening up ourselves to, I don't know.
I would imagine that this relates to like foster parents, adopted parents, law guardians, anyone related to the Department of Social Services, anything like that, who would have an interested stake in the student's curriculum. That was how I took it.
And I took it as it could be part of this the special education committees, they have community members on those committees.
Can we say stakeholders then? Is that more specific, or do we need that, or can we just let it go?
I don't know if it would make enough of a difference because, you know, one could argue if you're paying school district taxes, then you can be considered a stakeholder too. So I don't know. I don't know if that gets you the narrowing that you're thinking of.
I don't know. I
feel
guess
like I
I
get where
just
you're
felt
coming
like
from.
the list was all encompassing, and then to add that, I was like, well, who else? But you answered that, so I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Okay. Do you have anything else on page 6?
I don't know if you mentioned this before I got on, but the change of title is instruction and curriculum. We have to change that to teaching and learning.
Oh,
Oh. Yes, I
Second
noted
paragraph
that.
under curriculum. You
Yes,
might have
I
already-
noted that somewhere else, but I missed that in this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. We'll have to change that title.
Sorry, I didn't get that. So we're changing the title.
Yeah, Matt's title
Oh, right.
is
Okay.
not
Yep.
instruction and curriculum any
Okay,
longer.
thanks.
I have a
Oh.
question on page. Oh, go ahead, Ann. Or
What is it
whoever
going to
said
be?
that. Megan.
Learning and, I'm sorry,
teaching and learning.
teaching and learning. Thank you.
I have a question on page 7, the curriculum adoption. Do we currently do that process?
That's exactly what I had.
Thank you,
I
Jesse.
had that too. I think that's not something we do, and we have shall present. I don't know if you want to either get rid of it or put may or something, but we do not do that currently.
Could we say may present for its review periodically or as needed, or something more vague?
Or take that whole thing out? But is it better to leave it in there and make it less stringent?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is saying that we basically approve the whole curriculum. It says, you know, the board will review the curriculum to ensure consistency with adopted learning standards and adopt instructional materials that support the adopted curriculum. I'm like,
That was what jumped out to me, the instructional materials, because there's a whole other section about instructional materials that has its own methodology. So I didn't know if those seem to be at odds with each other. So if you leave that paragraph in and like ease off the language, I feel like I would still be like, it's not quite contradict each other, but it's like two different.
we don't
So you would advocate
adopt the curriculum?
removing that?
What's that?
Can we remove that?
It's our policy. It's local.
Well,
it's not
remember too,
required.
when we're done with this, we send it to NISBA for the review to make sure we're not violating anything.
Yeah.
So you could either ask to remove it, and NISBA will say, no, it's really something you have to have in there, or they'll say, go ahead. I think the paragraph before about what the curriculum shall include with the bullet points kind of gives you the guidelines for what the curriculum is going to have in it anyway. I mean, we have to follow the
Right.
state standards. I think at the very least you want to soften it or just get rid of it. Either way, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I read that is like Jim comes and is like, here's the curriculum. And we say, Jesse says, I'll vote in favor of adopting the curriculum, right? And that's, yeah. I
And
think
since
Be
all
careful
of
what
us
you
are
ask for on that one.
educators,
That's a lot of, I'm not sure if you want to do that.
yeah, that'd be
Certainly
a long,
not annually.
that'd be a long meeting.
Well, my vote is that we try to take it out. And then
I agree.
if NISBA says, no, you can't take it out, then like Samantha says, we need to soften it up a little bit, I think.
I agree. I'd like to try to take it out. Doug, Peter, where'd Chris go? You're good taking it out? Doug? I think that's a yes. You're muted, Doug. Okay, there we go. Good trying to take it out then. All right. And Megan? I think.
You see her thumbs up, right?
Oh, yes.
I'm
now
good
I
for
do.
I'm good for removing it. If I don't have anything to add,
Okay.
I might just put the thumbs up there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I wasn't even paying attention to your little box. Okay, now I know. All right, so the curriculum implementation part, is this our current practice? I mean, is that what our BLTs are? Besides the sandwich, now that I'm hungry for dinner.
I'm sorry.
I had that down as a note too. The line there that makes me again nervous is that shall, about halfway through, it says the curriculum for each subject or course shall be communicated. I think again, maybe may. I don't think we provide a written guide annually. I mean, a lot of this
Right.
stuff is kind of, it stays as is unless it changes. So, you know, you had the Common Core implementation a few years ago, which was managed, and, you know, Matt's undergoing an ELA review right now for our K-5 ELA, like, but we don't go back and say, hey, K2 math gonna be the same this year as it was last year. You know, here it is. Like, I think it's probably more practical, go with a may type of thing there.
There's
Does May cut
three
it?
sentences that say shall. Can we change each one of those to may? The guides may also include curriculum guides, may be available to parents. Yes?
And the well,
What does the last one have to be, shall?
yeah,
Because if a parent asks, then you can't be like, meh, maybe.
yeah. Because it says upon request.
Yeah.
So I think we need to honor that last one, but also up above, it says the building principal shall be responsible for the management of implementation. Does may soften it enough, or do we put in language that says, you know, we'll communicate any changes? Or do you think it's fine if we do the may, change the shalls to may?
I think that shall is okay.
The change
Which
in May,
one?
except for the last one.
In the like the third sentence or so, the building principal shall be
Principal. Yeah, that
That
one's
seems
okay.
like a shall.
Yeah, I'm okay with shall there.
Yeah.
And then two mays and a shall again.
Yes.
Jiggity jig, jiggity jig.
No, we got it. Kim, do you understand what we're? Okay. Good. Got a thumbs up from Megan on that one. Everybody else okay with that too? Okay. All right.
I have what I think is a
Anybody have
grammatical issue on the bottom of page 7. I think, and again, I'm not an English aficionado, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think that where it says instructional program to the board periodically, you would take out that comma. It should say board periodically and comma, if necessary, comma.
Yeah.
I think that first
I
of
would
the
think
three
so, too.
commas needs to come out.
I agree.
I agree also.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Anne.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Let me just check. Okay. I just wanted to keep track of the table of contents too, which we don't have. We don't have a 4300 or a 4310 or, and I don't, did they provide those? No, they didn't provide those for review. They said if we wanted to have those for review, we could do that. But I'm not necessarily interested in adding policies, but if anybody is, speak up as we go along here. So we'll move on to 4311.1, display of the flag. The only comment I have this is in the 3rd paragraph, the flag shall be flown at full or half staff pursuant to law. Then it says half staff to commemorate the death of a present or former board member or present employee. And I think it also should say or student, because I think somewhere else it says student too.
Does it give us too much wiggle room if we just say at the discretion of the superintendent?
I was going to address that also because I think we should include students.
The only thing I'll throw at you is, I don't know why it's written like that, but we've looked at it in our district. I know we looked at it when I was in Voorheesville. You get into some sticky areas with student memorials and memorialization of students, depending on cause of death and family preference and other type of stuff without going too far down that road. But I think that's probably why NYSBA left it as they did. You could always do it anyway. So I think that's probably the reason they didn't specify it there.
Can we add or at the discretion of the superintendent, so it gives you the option if you ever had to be in that awful situation to, say to the family of the deceased, we would like to do this to memorialize. Are you okay with that? Like, in order to have that conversation available, or does that not make sense?
I think part of the problem there is we're talking about law. So
okay.
It needs to be specified.
Hey, is there any law station?
I didn't hear that.
Oh, that was background. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Right,
It's
so
written
you're
this way
saying,
according to law, and then I think we should leave it alone.
I agree.
Just had a question, if we're okay on that one. I didn't quite understand in the first paragraph that towards the end of it, it says the Constitution and spirit that should animate our district. Animate in particular, I wasn't quite, I mean, if you guys are okay with that, I didn't know if that was the right word for that spot. And we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but it was just kind of like, I didn't quite understand what they were trying to get at.
Good point, Chris.
In the first paragraph.
Yeah, so
try to
towards
find
the
a-
end of the first paragraph, I mean,
Find a thesaurus.
I'm wondering, we said the ideals embedded in our Constitution and that of our district, something like that. I wasn't quite sure what they were trying to get at there.
I'm okay if we take it out in that of our district.
In the spirit of our district or something like that. I don't know. I mean, otherwise we just leave it alone. I just didn't quite understand the animate.
I know it seems like the connotation of the word animate seems upbeat, and you're talking about displaying the flag when somebody dies. So it doesn't seem to go together.
Well, there's inspire.
So the first and I can't even really call it a paragraph, the first sentence of the policy speaks more to the
Uh-oh.
We lost
We
you.
lost you, Megan.
I think we should just end it at after Constitution, period.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
good.
Megan?
Uh-oh. Are you there?
Yeah. So Peter suggested we end it after Constitution. We lost you
Oh,
in
yeah.
the mid-sentence. So
That's okay. Am I back now?
yes.
Okay, so I think just to explain, I think that animate, while I agree it's probably misplaced as a word, I think it's meant in the terms of we use the flag as a symbol of pride in our. So we use it to animate ourselves as a symbol of pride in our country and our community. I think that's why that's there, but I agree it's maybe not the correct connotation.
Right. So do you agree with Peter? Just leave it at end it with Constitution? Okay, good. Everybody else okay with that too?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So on to the regulation of the flag.
That's where it says student.
Yes,
I knew it. Yeah.
I knew I saw it too.
Yeah. Twice, in fact.
This was one where we got another version, and I was like, well, which one are we supposed to be using?
Right. I kept going back and forth thinking.
Oh, so the version we got later was our original version, and this version that is in the big packet was their recommended version.
Okay.
The same. Oh yeah, I think theirs includes 9/11.
Yeah.
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 Our old one doesn't.
So I think we just look at the revised one that they've included in the big packet, and I think the other one, they said they didn't review our version of it, and they're just recommending this version of it.
The note indicates that the board's current regulation did not include this, but the next two paragraphs, and the note at the bottom of page 10 indicates the next two paragraphs were not in our original regulation, but they are included for consideration. And I was just wondering, what my fellow board members think in terms of whether or not we should consider them.
Well, I kind of feel like we should include if we were to lose a student, but I agree that it does kind of put us in a sticky situation, like what Jim referenced, with certain circumstances. So I don't really, now I'm on the fence. I don't really know.
My comment was this will be at the discretion of the superintendent is the last sentence of that little paragraph about the students and former employees.
Comment on this one was where it says this will be at the discretion, take out this will be and put at the discretion of the superintendent in the beginning of the paragraph.
Mm.
And then say flags on individual buildings and change will to may. So it would read, at the discretion of the superintendent, flags on individual buildings may be flown at half-staff for 30 days. You could say it for a period of time. And then again, where it says the flag shall be flown, you could say may.
While you're at it, can you take out well known? I don't know. That seems harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
only gonna, I agree.
We only like the people we all know.
Right.
And if it's at,
100%
and if it's
agree.
at the and if it's at the discretion of the superintendent, then they have
Exactly.
less say anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that suggestion, Ann.
Yeah, that's good wording.
30 days to a period of time.
No, I think that's in the discretion part.
Yeah, 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 you're right. So change the will to may and the shall to may. Take out well known and put at the discretion of the superintendent at the beginning of the paragraph.
Yep. I think I think that first sentence of the second paragraph should be lumped into the first paragraph with the discretion of the superintendent.
Good idea, yeah.
So move that up. But I think we, again, may be flown as not are to be flown,
Right.
but may be flown. And then I think the all flags should be at half staff for the day of the funerals. Those two things I think we should leave in there as is, as opposed to at the discretion. So keep those a separate paragraph, but move the board member piece up under the discretion of the superintendent.
But that's part of the board member thing. All flags in the district may be flown at half staff when a present board member dies and are kept at half staff for 30 days. And then we
Right,
want
but
another
you're talking-
paragraph where it talks about the, oh yeah, okay. Okay.
That's just a suggestion. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
I'm good with that. So the second paragraph would begin with the second sentence.
Yeah, because those are days of funerals, where the other is like, 30 days
Yeah, yeah.
or a period of time. Anyone else have any thoughts about that?
I'm just a little concerned about what is stated in law, because there are laws for flying the flag.
Yeah, there is.
It said though in the comment, in the note above it, that it wasn't required. And it was for our consideration.
Well, then, yeah, either we post it or we don't. I'm just, if we go about modifying this, I would want Jeff to take a look at it.
I agree with Peter. It's always been my understanding that the superintendent has little discretion in terms of lowering the flag on most occasions. And you just don't do it, let's say, arbitrarily or because there's a special day in the district or something happened, that it's either at the direction of the governor or the president.
Well, that part is already named in the policy that when it's at the direction of the governor or the president, that we're already going to do that. I think this is in addition to those. Right above the note, it indicates that on certain days it will be half staff as well as on days designated by the president or the governor. So we're already in compliance with that piece. The discretionary piece would be for individuals within the district or the buildings.
Yeah.
Can I just ask too, since those two paragraphs were offered by NISBA to us to be added as part of the policy, would they have not checked the flag regulation before they offered for us to use it, or am I being too trusting?
I mean, they took ours and they expanded upon what we had, right? That was from 02.
Yeah.
So they
Did for the policy, but for the regulation, we didn't have this part.
Yeah, but they
I'm
offered
with
this
Peter
as a
though
sample.
about running it past Jeff and just making sure that, you know, we're following the letter of the law and not just deciding willy-nilly when to do it.
For locals.
Right. Yeah. We don't want to be disrespectful of the flag rules if, you know, just by ignorance.
Yeah, to Jim's earlier point, you can get into a sticky ground or a swamp or whatever you want to call it when you start taking, it's not quite favoritism, but having too much selection about who gets the flag lowered and all that. And you may antagonize some groups. So,
You mean like when they leave certain people out of the in memoriam at the Oscars? Is that what you're talking about? Like that kind of a thing?
Did that happen recently?
I agree.
It
Peter.
happened. Yeah.
I agree, Peter, and I think you're just putting the superintendent in a position where if he misses something that happens in an elementary school and you hear about it and doesn't get the flag lowered in time or whatever, he's open for criticism.
Okay, so do you want to take out those two paragraphs?
I think we should check with Jeff.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so make those edits that were suggested and then check with Jeff on the whole content of those two paragraphs. And then either strike them or edit them depending on what Jeff says.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying? Okay. I'm good with that too. But we all agree that the flag will not be displayed on days when the weather is inclement. It should stay in, correct? It's just these other two paragraphs.
Which two are you talking about?
Top two on page 11.
Yeah, the top two on page 11.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's my answer.
It's okay. All right. Anything else on that? The hoisting of the flag section or the indoor flags? Besides the he, she? Okay, then we'll move on. Page number 12. The AIDS instruction, which, so we don't have a policy on health education, but we have this specific AIDS instruction.
skipping 14, 4314? That
We
was
don't-
added.
Oh, no, that was a policy that was not reviewed by NISBA. And so I guess we need to decide whether we want to keep that in there or not. Sorry about that. I missed that on the,
Yeah, I actually
Um,
had like something on, there's 4317 too.
Well, the AIDS education is 15. So that's why I questioned if we were skipping 14.
yeah. But this, yeah, but the same thing goes for that. It's the same. They did not review this because they don't think we need it.
Well, if they're saying we don't need it, I'm okay with that. You know,
Right.
I don't want to like.
I believe
mess
that, I believe that's what they're saying with the ones italicized. Is that they just didn't include that in the NISBA review. So my interpretation of that is that we don't need it. They're not going to review it because we don't need it. But I don't know. I could be off on that because they didn't really give us more than, you know, what Linda passed along, which was the italicized policies are not included in the NISBA review.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, I'm inferring that we don't need it. So how about that? I'm not 100% certain.
When I was reading it, it seemed like the bolded text was just, that's what at least they're sharing with us at this time, you know, because they had said included in this draft. I mean, who knows, maybe potentially they'd look to share some additional items in a subsequent release for us to review, but it seems at least those bolded ones are the ones that they're sharing with us at this time.
Yeah.
See, different interpretation of the information.
Could someone just ask if we're supposed to, if they intend on keeping these in, or should we be asking if we should review them? Like, I mean, they're here. So what does that mean?
Right.
Should we be reviewing them? If we don't need them, great. I mean, maybe they're putting them in saying, we don't think you need this. Here's your policy. We don't think you need this, but here it is in case you want to keep it in. And if they're saying we don't need it, you know, and we read through it and we don't see a reason where that subject or that idea is not picked up somewhere else or a need for it, then we could agree that we don't need it. Maybe that's why it's in there, but none of us are really sure.
Right.
So
Yeah, maybe it's just adding to the key what the italicized means.
Beyond, they didn't review it.
right. So what
They
does
didn't
that
review
mean?
it because.
Right, exactly. What does it mean? We didn't review it.
Right.
We thought it was good enough. You don't need it. Why?
So,
you know.
Right. So let's get clarification on that. And for right now, let's skip those, reviewing those, because if we don't need to review them, or we review them just to say we don't need them, we agree with NISBA, we don't need them if that's the case. But let's skip those for right now, but come back to them.
Okay.
So Jim, can we get clarification on those, or whoever is corresponding with NISBA on these? What they meant by the italicized policies they did not include in their review. It's funny that I said because we didn't need them, and Chris said because they're going to come back to them later. Like, so which is right?
I'll defer that to our Director of Policy Analysis and Liaison with NISBA, Ms. Kim.
I guess that's me. No.
Okay.
Kind of the strange thing about this one, I'm looking at our policy and it's cross-referencing a policy that we don't even have.
Right? Thank you.
4328. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to get clarity from NISBA.
Right. Because if we don't need them and we look at them and we agree that we don't need them, then yeah, let's not spin our wheels. But if we, if they are going to review them at some point, then we should really clean them up. Okay.
I think Jeff will tell you that most of the policies are not required, right? So it's expansive. So it's probably good to look at that.
All right. So let's get that clarification before we dive into those at this point, and we can, obviously we're not going to be done with the 4,000 series by the end of tonight, so we can just keep trudging along for right now and omit those for the time being. Okay, so AIDS instruction, 4315.1. So I think we should take out that paragraph that says, which is the second from the bottom, the Board of Education shall be responsible for determining the content of the district's AIDS curriculum. I tell you, I don't know enough to be able to do that.
Can I also ask a question? The paragraph that there, the opt-out paragraph, it's just about the methods of prevention and not anything else. Is there a reason for that?
That segment of the AIDS curriculum. Yeah.
I think it should be removed also, that paragraph that they refer to.
But it says it's commissioner's regulation.
Yeah, that's what gave me pause on it too. It said it was in accordance with commissioner's regulations where a student will be excused concerning methods of prevention if the child's parents have filed a request.
So
they're like religious exemptions.
But they're required to listen to like methods of transmission, but not prevention. I don't know. Just seems weird.
I'm with you. I'm with
Right?
you, but I think
we may not have. It may not be up to us, but it struck me as being a little strange.
It's a very dated policy too. It's probably a couple decades old.
Yeah, seems like.
I'm not even sure what the incidence of AIDS is anymore, but I guess we have to have.
With you, Peter, I'm fascinated by this one because I think there's certainly some more current items that should be applied,
Right.
in New York State.
Okay.
Well,
I
is
think
this one
because they're addressing abstinence and as the most effective protection. And when you get into that kind of conversation, some parents don't want the kids getting that from school.
Yeah.
I find it amazing though. Yeah, I agree with you, Anne, but I find it amazing that we have a policy on this, but we don't have a policy on overall health instruction.
right?
Well, we might. I don't know that. I just know this one that we're looking at.
Well, we don't right now. It says that we don't. NISBA has a sample policy that we could put in, but we don't have one currently.
I think unfortunately what we have here is another example of just that there was a legislative mandate that was made at some point, and we are the ones who get to make sure that we have it in place for ourselves.
Or is this one, do we actually need something on this, or can we omit this too? It's a notice versus required or local, so I don't know what that denotes.
But it does reference education law at the on the next page, so my thought is that it is of a required nature.
Okay. 1991.
Is that what it says on our website?
Well, that's part of the referencing is like the 3 citations in the reference list are 89, 91, and 93. Which makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't we just leave it as is and move on?
Yeah.
Well, I would like to take the paragraph out that says the board is responsible for determining the content.
Yeah, I support you on that.
And do we have, and then in the next paragraph, it says, shall establish an advisory council. On my note is, do we actually have this? And if so, who is on it?
Right.
Must consist of board members, appropriate school personnel, parents, and community representatives. I think this is probably because back in the late 80s and 90s, this was, you know, something that was really scary, and people were probably being shunned or scared or whatever, and they wanted to make sure that, you know, people understood it, but you know.
Yeah.
There's two things there. I think it's a lot more prevalent than people actually realize it is because it's been around for so long. So I think you'd be surprised how prevalent it is. And also because of the opioid epidemic in our area, it may obviously be more prevalent. I guess my question is, before we add or remove anything, I think we need to know what the current education law is on this. Like, are these education laws current, and then do they say that we're supposed to have this advisory council? Can we run that by Jeff also, since we're already reaching out to him on so many other things, and ask him what is currently part of the education law as it relates to this training or curriculum?
Must we even have this in the first place?
The whole policy.
Right.
Well, yeah, it goes back to the regulation though, the commissioners. You know, if that education law is still on the books.
Yeah, the opt-out is a regulation, right?
That's how I read that gray box.
Yeah.
And it's also, like Jesse pointed out, a notice and not checked off as required. So I guess we leave with the question of, can we just eliminate this legally?
Yeah.
Can we eliminate it entirely? Because there's so many what ifs about it.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And it's not currently called AIDS either. It's HIV infection.
Right.
So that shows you the date of it.
Well,
it's outdated on many respects.
Yeah.
And if, you know, we're spending all this time reviewing the verbiage in it, do we even need to do that?
Yeah.
If it's not required.
Right. So let's get information on whether this is required, and if it is required, which parts of it are required.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
we'll go
that
from
sentence
there.
at the bottom, right? Commissioners' regulations are not written to provide for any board discretion in this area. Yeah. Therefore, students shall be excused rather than may.
Right, but that's the opt-out language. So do we definitely need that in there or not? I mean, they have, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So is it required? And if so, what parts are required?
Yeah.
And then we can go from there.
Yeah, and if there's specific areas that we as a board are supposed to make a decision, I think we may want to revisit.
Yeah, agreed.
Not the curriculum.
Not the curriculum. All right. We got those, you got those questions down there, Kim? Okay. So we'll move on to page 14, 4321, knowing that we're skipping 43-617, I guess it is, because we're finding out about the italicized ones, and we currently do not have a physical education policy, so we're not going to include one. So this starts the programs for students with disabilities under the IDEA and New York's Education Law, Article 89.
So this is a section we want to wait for Camille on.
Okay.
So we could, in the interest of getting some more done, it looks like we could move on to 4452.
Okay.
There is a spelling error on page 14. in the last paragraph, the third sentence down, there's 3 R's in co-curricular,
Curricular.
but that's the only thing I had there. I mean, that's not going to change when Camille looks at it.
No. And I have on page 15 a closed parentheses on the end of the second paragraph. But we'll skip all these. That goes through, so I'm trying to find the next page we need then, Kim. Page 56, 4322, is that the one you're suggesting we skip to?
Matt, would that be the next one we could look at? Or we wouldn't need Camille for that, correct? Gifted and talented.
Programs for the,
The English language. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that would be, I'm still scrolling through here. Yeah, I think it ends with 4321.14. So,
right. So the next one is on page 56. Programs for the gifted and talented. So this policy was adopted in 2002, and we want to review it to make sure it reflects our current philosophy and practice. It can be omitted or replaced with a NYSBA alternative that is more general. So does it, when I read through it, it seemed like it reflected our current policy, but our current practice, but you know, I'd like to confirm that.
The only thing is that, again, it nails down the superintendent. It says, we'll submit a written annual update to the board. I'm pretty sure we don't get an annual update about what they're doing for gifted and talented students. Nor do we need it, really.
Right.
I just think that when it says will and then puts in a defined date, I think we're really narrowing it a lot. We'll submit a periodic update to the board as a status report or something other than annual.
I mean, Jim, from your perspective on this, I mean, I know obviously we would all love to be able to do things for the gifted and talented. You know, I think at times this gets pushed aside just for budgetary reasons to be able to focus on our, you know, our general, like our mainstream population, as well as those who have IEPs. I mean, from your perspective, is this one that you'd want to be held accountable for?
I think for us, this policy probably goes back a ways to previously when I was in the district. I think we had more of a gifted and talented program, quote unquote. I think what really has been the model more recently has been to embed and provide these opportunities as much as we can. Matt put together a summary of that. It was in the board notes, kind of saw some of just the things that we're doing in general. So I think, to Ann's point, a written annual update, probably not necessary. It's less back in the day of the HOW kids, the high ability learners that we had. It's less about that, which was a very targeted program with specific target of kids and families. And there was a lot of things happening around that. It's no longer like that. It's more, again, opportunities that we're providing. And Matthew, I'll talk a little bit about some of those things in your little research project and then population of them that we did.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it just dovetails what you were saying. I think it's about more embedded opportunities, utilizing time within the school day at the K-5 level. All the buildings do have time in their day now where kids can do more differentiated activities, some by choice, some are assigned, and that's opportunities for enrichment there. And then as we get more in the middle school, high school, it becomes more academically focused in terms of taking accelerated courses for college credit and the like as you move up the ladder a little bit. So I guess the other part of that, I think it was in the report talking about clubs as well as a way to get more enriching opportunities. But I think it's trying to approach that opportunities for all and making sure that, any kid that has an interest in that, we certainly provide those opportunities in a way that's attainable for all. And I think that's really kind of been the approach. And doing my research on that seems to be the approach across all the buildings.
So are you advocating we remove this policy?
I don't know.
Or there's
And
I guess I'll jump in, Jim. I feel like gifted and talented feels a little bit like an antiquated type term. And when I think some of the criteria still is relevant for some of the acceleration type programs that we do. I mean, I think there are some, criteria that we have for participation in that, but I don't think it's necessarily tied to gifted and talented. It feels like, that's a concept that's, kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, I think enrichment tends to be more of the term that people use for those opportunities, and maybe it's a little bit more inclusive than it was back then. So I don't want to say that you're not going to ever use this criteria. I just don't know that we have the program that this policy was designed for.
And I think that's what I was trying to get at, Matt, is, I mean, if you guys feel it's important to have in place, we can certainly look to continue. I wish we were at a point that we could really look to do the full spectrum of the students. But this one just seems like, kind of on the higher end.
I propose we omit this policy.
I second that.
I agree.
Agreed.
Megan, I got your thumbs up. Okay. Good discussion. Let's see, we're checking on time. We got 3 minutes. Does anybody want to tackle, or is this academic intervention services? My broad question on this, and maybe I'll just ask the question and we can go from there next time, is does this policy appropriately account for what we do, or does it reflect our new the RTI stuff that we've done? I mean, we put that whole thing in place. The woman's name is escaping me now, before she left last year.
Kara did, yep.
Kara, thank you. And so I thought that was fantastic. So does this dovetail with that, or does this, I mean, we have that new plan in place. So do we need this? Does this plan appropriately count to the response to intervention plan that we have?
The opening paragraph that's shaded there, it says, as a reminder, RTI can be used in lieu of AIS. And I think it's fair to say that we are using RTI in lieu of specific. AIS is part of our RTI plan. So we actually have a plan that is including AIS and a lot more. And I think that's probably what we should be steering. It does allude to, let's see, does it talk about may rescind its policy? It should ensure that it has an adequate RTI policy in place. I don't know where that falls. If school boards provides that, we have a plan, not a policy. So if we needed a specific RTI policy, I don't know if that's something else that school boards can offer us or provide an example, because I don't believe that shows up later on. I think this would be the spot. If it's not an
Right.
AIS policy, we would need an RTI policy.
So could we ask NISBA for an RTI policy?
I feel like if this doesn't what's the word I'm looking for? If this is general enough to incorporate our ITI and doesn't go against that it's okay, because it does say that we have the academic intervention services. As long as it doesn't contradict
No, I
our
think that's fair.
RTI.
I think that what this policy is doing, we are doing, and the RTI plan would affirm that. So I think, the policy would certainly stand on its own, but obviously our plan is showing something a little bit more robust than just what's in the policy.
Right.
So if the policy was more robust than the plan, then we'd have a problem.
Right, yeah.
But I think the policy is general enough that
Yeah,
it's okay. The
Yep.
only thing I would do is take out the alternate text in the last paragraph.
In the last paragraph.
Yeah,
Or
just-
the
Beginning-
alternate.
it's 6:15.
Yep.
We have another
So-
meeting coming up.
I would like to table this particular policy until Camille is on with us also, because I'm interested to see how the AIS versus RTI versus the special education services, how that all dovetails together. Because sometimes through the RTI program, they identify students that actually require the IEP. So I would prefer that we table the remaining
Okay.
discussion for Camille.
Yep. Right. And then we're at time, as Peter noted. So, okay. So we are going to then now take a break, and we will reconvene at 6:15. You can either log out and we'll log back in, or just mute yourself and shut